So why can't American kids read? So she's gone viral for this video.
Our students cannot read at grade level.
And she goes on to say,
if they see it, then they can reproduce it. And they can't sound it out.
And all of this pisses me off, but first, it's important to remember that reading is not innate. We are innately capable of understanding visual imagery and very fast, like 75 frames per second or 4,500 images per minute. And visual imagery comes long before textual. And the ability to read and write was not something everyone needed. Even in places where they were very religious, most of religion was shared orally, or orally plus with images. And culture spent a whole lot of money on visual culture to ensure everybody had some level of understanding. You might not be able to read the Bible, but you know what the crucifixion looked like. And many early books paired imagery with text. If you can't read this, you can get something out of it. And literacy exploded once printmaking came out. But where did they learn to read? Most of people who learned to read learned from their families. And it's because, particularly in many religious communities, including Christianity, religion was transmitted by text. Now, in the 1800s in the United States, you might still learn to read at home, and then you, if you were lucky, got to go to school and have, let's say, a primer, a book that helped teaching you more. It's really not until the 20th century where the work of learning to read fell to teachers. This is because more and more families had both parents outside of the house. And by the 1950s, Rudolf Flesch realized that many of the kids who were in schools could not read, and he advocated using phoneme. Many people in the 20th century learned to read with phonics, and his goal, though, was to create a very educated populace because he believed that the workforces of the future needed to have very rigorous reading skills. He was also very worried about the American populace, particularly falling behind the Russian or Soviet ones. And most of the teachers who are teaching today learned phonics. But in the early 21st century, people believed that computers would make things easier. And that was one impetus to change how students were learning. So schools moved towards sight reading in hopes that they could speed up how fast people could read. But it also was in some ways fueled by a 20th century anti-intellectualism. Because once somebody learns to read, then they read to learn, and then they might overthrow the system. As a result, reading levels plummeted. And in fact, now, thanks to many lawsuits, including one in Oakland, phonics is back in schools. And probably right in the nick of time, because with reading levels at a very low level, we then went into COVID. And there are many statistics about where we are in terms of literacy post-COVID. A McKinsey report from 2021, for example, says that people are 4 months behind reading comprehension. Other reports are much, much less hopeful. And the reason that this makes me so angry is that we decided to experiment on a generation of kids